Hello, everyone. Welcome. I guess you consider it a potential single lady socials. We have split the difference because I am one of the single ladies, but I have my amazing co-facilitator, Jen O, in the chat, who is not a single lady. So I feel like you're going to get the best of both worlds and we'll split the difference, but we are happy that everybody is here. If you have not seen me before, my name is Katie Gideon. I will be the on-camera facilitator for this Saturday night social. And I love Saturday nights. I'm seeing a lot of our returning socialers. It is so great to have you with our amazing Team Texas. Former Team Texas, but forever Team Texas, because we are glad that you are here. We're glad that you're going to set up because we know Saturday night socials are a vibe. And indeed, it is Valentine's Day or Galentine's Day or however else you want to celebrate this day. I like this particular quote with the fall in love with taking care of yourself. So maybe that is the direction we're going to go. But we are glad that you're here. If this is your first time joining us, what we appreciate is that this can be a kind of choose your own adventure social. It's one of those you can participate in as much or as little as you want. So that can be an idea of maybe you want to be in the chat. And if you want to participate in the chat, just double check that it is set to everyone. But you can certainly share hosts and panelists. That comes to just myself and Jen. We are happy to help out there. But we're going to have the camera going. There's going to be music playing. I will have a handful of examples in the slides that are there. So it's going to be a lot of that navigation, but we are glad that you're here and we're glad that you're choosing to set up your week 3 of February with us. And so, as always, please be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Please respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions, though we do love to talk about our products. And we do know that a lot of you connect on a couple other apps. We just ask that when you share that information, do remember to kind of, why we're here. We're here to set up our journal. We're here to have kind of that type of focus on those different prompts. So just make sure it's not detracting from kind of why we're here. But we are glad that you're here and we certainly love the idea to share all of those wonderful things that we do to kind of help support our Silk and Sonder self-care journey. And then while Jen and I have some information, we will most likely redirect a lot of your questions to our customer care team at hello@silkandsonder.com because we don't have a lot of that information. We have some, and we're always happy to help. But for most of those questions, and that's concerns, feedback, any of those things, definitely reach out to hello@silkandsonder.com. And then, as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you're responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So we know that you may have had a week. This may be a little bit of a tough day as you're navigating potentially new milestones. So we appreciate all of those feelings and all of those emotions. But at the same time, do take care of yourself. If you need to set some, mental boundaries or mental barriers to make sure that you don't walk away from this kind of more upset when you show up, please do so. I feel like that also applies to me. I've had a roller coaster of a week, which we'll get into it. But if I seem to be dwelling a little bit too much on my roller coaster of a week, please share that in the chat and tell me to come back to the group and revisit it. Because as we say, we love that you've come exactly as you are. But at the end of the day, we want to walk away getting really excited and intentionally optimistic about the week that we have ahead. Because this is our opportunity to take a little bit of that control as we navigate that. So we are still leaning into the theme of belief. And I have found that this idea of belief has certainly had a heavier impact on my self-confidence than I would like to admit. But I have fallen down the Good Hangs podcast rabbit hole by Amy Poehler. And I probably am late to the party because I do know she did win an award for it. So I know it's been done for a while. But I adore Amy Poehler. I always have. And I also love Anna Gasteyer. And so I was listening to their session. It was the Christmas one. And what I loved is the reflection that Amy lets the guests do and the openness that it makes it because Anna Gasteyer was able to reflect on her very, very demanding stint as Elphaba on Broadway and Chicago when she played in Wicked. And people were very unkind to her when that came because they didn't really know she had a singing background. They just saw her as the Martha Stewart a reenactor. So she did have the option to kind of at one point, because the sound guy during her performances recorded all of these. And in her mind, she could just think of all the notes she missed, all of the, notes she didn't hit, the riff she did wrong, the enunciation she did incorrectly. And so she just kind of beat herself up over it. And then when she went back to listen to all of these, because she was like, I'm probably going to have to go through, hours of these so that I can compile one good song and one version of it. And I loved what she then said is that you were able to circle back and kind of go back to that younger version of yourself and be like, oh my God, I can't believe how unnecessarily and relentlessly mean I was to myself. And it's like, yes, I mean, if I didn't able to take it now in everyday life, but it's such important, I don't know if it felt like such an important lesson. And so I loved that idea of obviously there are lenses that you can always come back to see, but at the end of the day, we are actually quite vicious to ourselves. And that was kind of what she kept recreating and replaying in her head. But when she listened to it, it was like, honestly, she got, 100% right, or maybe 90%, 95% right. But that difference between the 95 and 100% is only something that you're going to notice. And so I loved that idea of maybe at the end of the day, we should probably not be as mean to ourselves. And I feel like that's one of those as a perpetual negative dweller. That is certainly something I want to keep reminding myself because there's a couple other quotes or memes that I've used where it's like, you spend a lot of time in your head, so you might as well make it a really pleasant or a nice place. But I loved the fact that you could openly kind of, I mean, these two who have had careers where they are just picked apart, especially when it comes to comedy. And so for them to kind of realize that even at our I always kind of joke with some of the teams that I've been on, even on our worst days, we're still a lot better than a lot of people. And so I feel like that is kind of that juxtaposition of having that belief that even on your worst days, you are still better than most and you're still going to show up and do all of these amazing things. So just maybe be a little bit nicer to yourself. And yes, Jen did put the link to the podcast in there. Like I said, I highly recommend it. It was so fun. They have Anna Gasteyer has amazing stories. So definitely. And they just crack each other up. And I love when friends just chat and crack each other up. So, with that in mind, as kind of the thoughts on belief this week, we're going to move into our mind map. We're going to do our rosebud thorn exercise, and then we're going to do those weekly setup pages. So if you haven't joined us before with those mind maps, we get to do those just for the weekly setups. It is not something that is printed in your journal. It is ones that you kind of build and create. And so you can either have the one that you designed. I'm one of those that I design it on a blank page. We always do 4 weeks. And then if there's a bonus one, we mention that. But it's always 4 weeks. So we have 4 lovely little squares. And we do present them each week. So if you miss a week, you don't actually miss a week. It's if you want to do them, but you don't have to play catch up. This isn't homework. You don't have to have all 4 by the end of the by the end of the month. But these are really wonderful opportunities to dive a little bit deeper into the theme. And we have found that they've been really special and they kind of add a different lens to kind of how I know me in particular look at these themes, but even just the conversations that happen in the chats alone, I think are really amazing and really magical. So I appreciate not only being able to kind of come up with an answer, but I love sharing kind of the thought process of how we got to these answers or how we maybe haven't gotten to these answers. But I have found them quite beneficial. So the first week, we looked at belief inheritance. Last week, we worked at protection, kind of what beliefs we did to protect ourselves. So now we're going to kind of add that other lens, which is belief crisis. And so, when has belief of yours been tested, broken, or rewritten by experience? And kind of a phrase to answer this is after this experience, I could no longer believe could be a start of your answer if you need help with that. Or instead, I began to believe because of in that regards. I know it is, Amanda, absolutely. And so here are some additional kind of versions of that is what event or season challenged the belief? Did it shatter suddenly or one of those that erode slowly? And then it's more of like you can think on that kind of slightly more optimistic side of things. What replaced it? Was it another belief? Was it some certainty? Or was it something more truer? And then after this experience, it's that same question and phrasing that I did there, but a big reminder that I wanted to have because even I had some deeper, not so great feelings when I kind of went down this because I felt like I experienced a kind of crisis belief a little bit earlier than I would have liked to. So I wanted to protect, younger me. And that is treat the lens you look at this experience with a little bit of care and give yourself some grace in that. So like I said, without going into it, my big crisis was kind of understanding kind of a truer definition of what team dynamics was. Um, I was 14. I was on a soccer team, and I thought everyone liked me. I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to in contributing to this team. And then I found out at the end that, in fact, there were people that resented me for being on the team, and the contributions that I thought I was making and that everyone liked me were not true. And that devastated 14-year-old me to the point I couldn't communicate it, I couldn't understand it. And it took me years and years and years to kind of reflect and be like, I shouldn't have been treated like that. And so it completely changed and altered the way I approached teams. And it wasn't that I was no longer more invested in whatever team I was on. It was more of I realized that there were physical contributions that I could make for sports. Give your 120% in that capacity, play your position, do everything, still be polite, still be amicable. But then there was this emotional and mental protection that needed to happen because a lot of times the teams you are on are ones that someone chooses you for. They're teams that maybe you choose yourself, or they're teams that are chosen for you in that capacity. So you do have that ability to protect yourself in that capacity without at all inhibiting those end goals of the team. And it was one of those things, I find that a very valuable lesson to know because then I got to see how true team dynamics work on a larger scale, even, co-ed teams in that different capacity. Because then I went on to join the military as an officer. I went to the Naval Academy. So that whole new team perspective changed. But at the end of the day, there is still that kind of sphere of circle and influence and trust that I still hold very dear to the point I have not had that type of mental just whiplash that I had at 14. So I'm sad that younger me experienced it, but 39-year-old me is very happy that I was able to kind of navigate that because I think it saved me a lot of heartache at the back end. And so again, sad, but I had a great team, a great team, aka my friends and family. The closer friends and family were able to kind of help understand all of those thoughts and feelings. And I do think it makes me a little bit more careful and a little bit more understanding with that. But I have just found that that is a really valuable lesson when it does come to any type of team capacity. So those are my kind of thoughts and feelings on this mind map. Like I said, I did find it hard. This was a very sad thing to kind of revisit because I hadn't revisited in a while. Like I said, went through that. I don't want to play soccer anymore. I don't want to do what was so much of my identity, and having to kind of pick myself up and do it again in front of all those same people. Whew, 14 me was definitely stronger than I probably should have been, but here we are. So I'd love to hear in the chat, especially if you're having reservations or finding this a little tricky. Those can be just as valuable as, like we said, answers ourselves. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to play some music and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And I agree, the massive group hug for this because I find I think it was Nikki that said it best. The highlight does become the mind map, but it hits some of those icky, squishy, uncomfortable feelings. But at the end of the day, I was still able to look back and reflect on this, that why it seemed like a very, very dark, probably month, I think, in my teeny tiny teenage snapshot. I still continued to play team sports. I went back to my high school team 3 years later, ended up being a captain my senior year. And I still love team sports. I still love being parts of teams. Like I said, it just rewired how my brain approaches it so that I can walk away still in that like happiness of also accepting as I got older is that not everyone is going to like you. And honestly, that is perfectly fine. But again, it takes a while to get there. And I appreciate looking back through that lens that this happened. I'm sad that little me experienced it, but little me became a lot better because of it. And I do see a lot of everyone else having just some like of those hard navigation things to do. And even then, this is going to be tough, but we have the rest of the week to kind of look and reflect. Or maybe it's just a little bit of that acknowledgement. But I always encourage you to be careful what lens you look at this from. Let's take a page out of Anna Gasteyer and Amy Poehler's book and not beat ourselves up for the decisions or the things that impacted us then or the responses that we had then. We can be gentle, we can be careful, and we can find those glimmers within it of how we have overcome or how it has impacted how we are now. So, thank you, everybody, for sharing. But now, in the lens of continuing to reflect, we are going to do our rose, bud, thorn exercise, which this is a wonderful opportunity to look back on the week that you've had. This is on page 44 in your February journal. And again, it is that opportunity to acknowledge the highs, the lows, and everything in between and give it its moment for reflection. But then you get to decide, do I want to take these thoughts, emotions, feelings, physical momentum, any of those things into the next week? Or do I just want them to have their little evaluation and then kindly show them the door? So, and at the same time, please continue to share any of the previous responses, even as I have moved on. We unfortunately do only have an hour to cover all these things, but we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to share what is on your heart, soul, and all of those feelings as we go through this. So the rose is going to be something that was fun, a highlight, something that made you happy, made you smile, made you feel good, or was at least a positive and accomplishment. And so for me, it was all about honestly like the like girl gang events. I went to a Mean Girls themed cocktail event, which was so much fun. I love a good theme, and this theme was perfect. It was so much fun. I had a wonderful time with one of, I would say, my newer friends, but you show up at those events and even she and I were like, we get each other, we're going to have fun. And it was a wonderful time. And like I said, I'm all about the mean girl vibes. Not in that sense, but I love the film. Hence hashtag callback to the SNL ladies. And then I went to a very iconic venue in Glasgow called the Barrowland with two of my other friends. And it was a punk band that played Disney cover songs. So imagine like the weirdest emo mosh pit, big tattooed pierced guys in their heavy metal attire singing Aladdin songs and Moana songs. And we ended with Let It Go from Frozen. And it was the weirdest thing to see, but loved every minute. And then the bud is something that you're looking forward to, something that you're excited about, an emerging opportunity, something that you can cultivate either into a rose or prepare for the thorn. Like I said, I'm going to double down on Good Hang with Amy Poehler. I know I have a handful of episodes to catch up on, but what's fun is they are offered on Spotify. I am not one of those that can just listen, so I get to listen and watch the video, which I appreciate. And like I said, I've watched three or four thus far, and the pure nuggets of those thoughts I have found really helpful and just really inspiring. And then the thorn, that's going to be a challenge, something that didn't go so well. And even I have pivoted from dwelling on a negative thing to what is something that is taking too much time, energy, or an effort from you, either mentally, emotionally, physically, any of that capacity. So that is what I reframe. And so honestly, I have had a roller coaster of a week. I've had some really frustrating things going on. I've had some other frustrating things going on. But then I've had these really great experiences, again, highs and lows. So it's just been a little bit of that kind of mental and emotional preparation when it comes to the highs, the lows, and having to do other people's jobs, which is always irritating. But as always, please join us on page 44. We would love to celebrate those roses with you, get excited for those upcoming buds, and then provide just extra love, thoughts, care, and supports around those thorns. So I'm going to stop talking. I will play a quick song, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I always love one hosting these on a pretty fairly regular basis, and especially a lot of those folks that do come a lot. It's a really wonderful snapshot, and I also feel like kind of in its truest form, kind of that concept of Sonder that comes from Silk and Sonder, and that everyone is experiencing all of these very vivid, real lives, kind of all of those different experiences. So just being able to one appreciate that every one of you, as you share, but also being just to kind of be along for that little snapshot for each and every one of you. And I always like to at least give this thought a platform with that rosebud thorn concept, because as I said, it's your now opportunity to decide what you want to do with those experiences, how you want to handle them. And that's from even like the practical, how are you going to, physically move past it? How are you going to emotionally move past it? What are those things that are going to be required? Because that is something that you can control when we talk about the spheres of influence. So I always appreciate the opportunity to do so. So we are now going to move into the weekly planning pages, which are going to be on page 46 and 47. As always, if you need me to go back to a slide, let me know when I go off camera, and please continue to share in the chat as you want to. The first thing and the way that I always approach each week is that this is your opportunity to ask yourself, what do you need this week? And a lot of that can be, what do you need? What do you need from the week? What do you need the week to look like? Because I love that idea of kind of putting it out there, what you're kind of asking, and then how can you formulate how to kind of provide that response? Because sometimes what you need is exactly as written, verbatim on those pages. Sometimes what you need is complete repurposing, and sometimes what you need is a break from some of these sections. So just because I provide specific examples or walk through kind of how my brain works, there is no right or wrong way to set this up. It always comes back to, what do you need for your week to come? So we're going to start at the top of, my mouse will work, on top of page 46 with the I want to feel. And this one I certainly rephrase because I always like to have a little bit of goal. And as I'm experiencing those roller coasters of the week, the highs, the lows, and everything in between, I like to give myself at least that kind of guiding back to center idea. And that's where I frame it with, this week I want to feel, or how I want to feel this time next week. And sometimes how you want to feel is the word, a simple word, a different definition of a word, a phrase. It could be leaning into the theme of the month. It could also be your word of the year if you're still kind of navigating that. Maybe it is less of something, more of something. Maybe it's a percent better, a percent healthier, percent more hydrated. Maybe it is the affirmations. Maybe you need multiple words because you have different things that you want to accomplish each day. But I'm also a big fan of, when in doubt, sticker it out, because stickers are pictures and pictures are worth 1,000 words, and finding that type of motivation. So I'm going to play a quick song, but I would love if you want to share in the chat kind of how you want to be intentionally optimistic with how you want to feel this time next week, or this week you want to feel. We'll see you soon. Okay, so now that we have that, and even as we work through these sections, you do not always have to come up with something new and earth-shattering each week. A lot of these help with establishing routines and that type of thing. So sometimes copy and pasting from the previous week works wonders. So I always appreciate when people make that connection from the previous week of like, I'm going to stick with this particular theme because it's really working at the moment. So now I'm going to combine these next two sections on page 46, which is the weekly major 3 goals and the weekly to-dos. And so just because the criteria appears to establish major 3 goals does not mean that they need to be major. They can be minor 3 goals. And just because there is 3, it can actually be 2, it can be 1, or it could be more than 3. And so sometimes it is leaning into the categories. So maybe a mind, body, and soul one. As I feel like repeated myself a few of the socials in a row, but the alliterations are a great way to kind of trick yourself into choosing some of these things, especially if, like I said, I'm watching it currently snow right now. So it's going to be a little bit harder for me to find some motivation for the week. So maybe leaning into some of those iterations would be really helpful. Or maybe these are the mental and emotional reminders that you need to have for yourself so that you can accomplish your to-do list, so you can feel the way you want to feel this time next week. Maybe you need to almost micromanage your day a little bit more with the idea of having an early goal, a midday goal, and an evening goal in that type of structure. So you want to make those type of accomplishments. Maybe you want to, again, connect those weekly major three goals with the weekly to-dos because you have your categorized major three goals and then the different things in potentially bingo form to gamify how you're going to do that so that it can function that way. And again, maybe it is leaning into the four alliteration components, which are create. So that's a you goal, the consume, that's for others, the cavort, which is to move, which I think is a fun way to turn it into movement. And then the commune, which again is the kind of leaning into that social aspect. So again, leaning into the alliteration, but still embracing that kind of categorical idea. And then maybe it's more, like I said, the affirmations or the mantras or the kind of mental and emotional reminders to get you through the week. And again, just because you have three options doesn't require it. Maybe it is just a focus on the home and the work. Or again, taking a page out of Punk Rock Factory with letting it go. So let go, leap into, and learn. And then again, we have those weekly to-dos, and these can be a traditional to-do list, or you can approach it from a to-da standpoint. The difference between to-do and to-da is that everything is to done. It's just how you celebrate it along the way. I am a to-da person because I do like to celebrate, but at the same time, I have also found that I will be leaning a little bit more into the Eisenhower matrix with that do, decide, delegate, or delete. But in my particular situation, I don't delete anything, I merely delay it. So that just helps with kind of reprioritizing or restructuring your to-do list because sometimes all you need to accomplish your to-do list is just to do a little bit of a shuffle and maybe see them from a slightly different perspective. The Pomodoro technique can also be extremely helpful. It's where you kind of knock off some of your to-do list, but have a set timer and then give yourself a little bit of a reprieve on the back end for that. I do love that Nathania do calls them quests. I feel like that came really handy when one of our themes was play. It's super fun. I think we also brought it back for like bravery because it also fit really well into that. So sometimes it is just how do you mentally and emotionally tackle all of these things? Because I do think that type of reframing will absolutely help. And then at the same time, maybe it's more of just the needs and the want structure, or even the gentle reminders to don't do this instead. Or maybe you're leaning into some of those happy thoughts, or maybe this is a section that you need a break from because you are putting your to-do list in a different section. So maybe it's being a little bit more gentle on ourselves with those weekly wins, or just the gentle reminders of weekly to be's, or even structuring kind of a dual category with the needs and the wants in those different to-do versions. So I am going to go back to the beginning, play a song, but would certainly love how you approach these sections. Do you keep them separate or do you find that they support each other really well in accomplishing what you want to do so you can feel this way next week? We'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. So now we're going to move into the habit and activity section, which is the bottom of page 46. And this is one that I absolutely copy and paste from week to week. I'm a creature of habit. I am definitely one of those, like, I adapt well to new routines, but I don't always like to change routines in that capacity. So I always feel like I try to find a way to kind of navigate these things within the margins. So my monthly habit tracker has the same three things on it that I then carry over into my weekly habit tracker and add the lens of reality. So I want to move every day, read every day, and journal every day. So, like I said, as I am looking out my window, it is snowing. My movement for tomorrow is going to look a little bit different because one, I don't really want to fall or embarrass myself in that capacity. So I will probably stay a little bit inside, which means more time for reading and journaling. But that's kind of the approach that I always do. I will adjust my expectations for what I'm going to be able to accomplish within that week, within the time frames of either, like I said, movement, depending on weather or workload or kind of other those things. Same thing with I would like to kind of time or read. Luckily, I sometimes can be like, read as far as you can in this book, but there are the times I kind of have to add some restriction because I have to get other things to do. But maybe you want to set actual goals for those habits and activities that you're wanting to do. Maybe this is a little bit more of those mental and emotional reminders that you kind of want to give yourself. Maybe this is the section that you need a break from. And I saw in the Silk and Sonder app that a lot of folks were kind of struggling, which about mid-month we try to see a little bit with just kind of a routine of journaling. What I appreciate is that this is one of those sections that you can help future self with. You can turn this into kind of a Hansel and Gretel moment. These are your breadcrumbs. So you can provide one of those things too. Check in with your intentions page, work on the coloring page, work on some of the journal prompts, or do the daily rituals, do a journal, prompt in that capacity. If you are working with our AI coach, Jenny, maybe it's check in with her to kind of get some sort of reflection opportunity. So you can help yourself in this regard when it comes to the routines, because at the same time, you still have your monthly habit tracker that is set up with those type of things that you want to do every single day. So maybe this is that kind of helpful structure to help kind of build back up or revisit your journaling routine. And again, just because there are 5 lines does not mean you need to use all 5. Maybe it is 3. And I was to say, silent drum roll, please, because the next slides are the wonderful iconography that I love and adore. And so I repurpose my expense tracker with the adventure and bucket lists. And so I do have a line item in that is to complete a bucket list or an adventure item every single day. I love putting these magical things on a pedestal in that capacity because a lot of these things are something that you're already doing. So why not give it, a special title, make it fun, make it magical? Because I am a big, been leaning into the magic of ordinary days. And so I love that and I appreciate that. So these are the kind of inspiration that I have, which again is why you see that I'm dressed up a little bit for Valentine's Day. I have my romance reader shirt on, so I love that. And then at the same time, I feel like these are also wonderful little reminders to think about with those mental and emotional things, with the wonderful little doodles to go with it, because I love being able to speak to the doodles to kind of compound those really gentle ideas. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to play another song and we'll see you soon. Thank you for sharing. I guess y'all didn't know you were coming to a very elegant chamber orchestra performance for the playlist tonight. But thank you for sharing. We have just completed page 46, which I lovingly refer to as the A side of a record. And so this is a page that I do every single week diligently. And then we flip over to the next page, which is page 47. And that is one that is lovingly the B side, where they have some amazing gems, but they're not exactly chart toppers for my Billboard Top 100. But they're certainly magical when they pop out, and I do appreciate the templates. But I've just found far more satisfaction in what I need from my week, and it doesn't always include these sections that I just would lose sleep over. And so, starting at the top of that, I'm going to combine this page, one for being aware of time, but also, like I said, that's how my particular brain works. So, we have the meal plan, and you can use it exactly as a meal plan. You can use it as something that a planning tool, a tracking tool, either in real time or something that you do kind of as you go. Maybe this is where you want to focus on like one good thing. Maybe this is where kind of the stickers are. Maybe it is leaning into some of those kind of mental and emotional reflection opportunities with the meal plan for the soul. So this is where you kind of track some of those prompts that you're working on. Maybe you take a page out of Gloria's artistic book with the wonderful doodles, because as Jeno will say in the coloring socials, this is an opportunity to turn your brain off when you're coloring or doing something in that capacity. And again, no one is looking over your shoulder and grading these. So you can kind of get some real satisfaction out of each of these. And maybe it's again, this is where the daily affirmations are, because you don't need to track them in the app because that causes some added frustration. Jen and I can relate. So maybe this is just where you write it down to acknowledge or one that speaks to you. I certainly use this when I talk about the one gem. The one gem that I always appreciate from this particular section is the clothing tracker or the clothing plan, wardrobe plan. I use it when I travel, and that's because I have to kind of limit suitcases and those type of things. So I have found that this works wonders for my ability to not overpack. Highly recommend that. I've also used it when I've had kind of back to back to back client meetings, and so I'm not wearing the same thing because I work from home. So I do make sure that I have my appropriately rotated sweatshirts, so that it does look like I'm, doing things. The Mind Body Health Plan is a section that you can also, again, plan for or something that you can do in real time. And again, don't worry, I will come back to all of these slides at the end and go through. So maybe it is you need a little bit of that helpful trickery. So you're leaning into the alliterations of the week. And again, shout out to Nathania for the bottom left one with the I feel and I need. I find this an elegantly simplistic check-in that is immensely powerful because it gives you an opportunity to just kind of clear your mind, focus on kind of specifically why are you feeling the way you are feeling and how can you help support you to answer that within those spheres of control. So appreciate that. Maybe it's again, this is where the highlight of the day are. Maybe this is where your bucket list inspirations are. Maybe it's the 7 types of rest. And then it's also kind of leaning into the prompts, or maybe you have another kind of goal that you're working on, a decluttering or a reading or a podcast or those type of progressive things. You can track them here. And then again, I love the iconography. I think these were really wonderful reminders, especially as we mentioned at the beginning. Valentine's Day can cover a whole spectrum of thoughts, feelings, and emotion when you talk about love and who it can be projected on, but also kind of things to say to yourself is today, because that type of self-love, I do believe, also goes hand in hand with self-belief. And then we have the shopping list, and shout out to those that liked protozoa growing up. I think I'm showing my age a little bit. And the shopping list can go hand in hand with the meal plan, so you can kind of track it that way. Or maybe this is where the self-care is. Maybe this is where the bingo boards are. I saw that someone was going to be turning 60 this year, so maybe you're leaning into a milestone bingo, or even a holiday bingo. It's a great way to do that, or using the kind of bucket list things to do so. Maybe this is where the to-be list is, those gentle reminders to yourself, ideas for mini breaks, social check-ins, the buy and don't buy. And I know we love to find glimmers, so maybe it's a glimmer bingo or just a dental note to yourself, or if you do tarot pulls, or even just the super fun question of what are you watching, reading, and listening to. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, play one more song to close out our chamber music performance. And at the end of the day, if you are not chair dancing by the end of one of my socials, not doing it right. So we'll see you. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And who knew that Carly Rae Jepsen, Katy Perry, and Bach all existed in the same universe? But appreciate all of the kind of questions and considerations when it comes to around how to celebrate milestones in really powerful and meaningful ways, which I think is an appropriate transition into that very last section at the bottom of page 47, which is the I am loving. And it's one of those things, it's a great way to just kind of close out the week. And so these are the current things that I love. I'm in my sassy little dramatic animal era and still living, honestly, My favorite Galentines are the facilitators because we have such way too much fun and a wonderful time. So it's always appreciative. But thank you everybody for sharing. As always, we would love to continue the conversation since our time together is over. We'd love to continue the conversation in the Silicon Sonder app, providing all of those wonderful inspiration ideas that we not only use for our socials, but it certainly helps a lot of our users out who maybe haven't been to a social yet. But we love having those. And at the same time, Jen is going to be putting some links in the chat. One, we do have our Silicon Sonder 7th year birthday coming up. Meha is hosting a birthday bash on February 18th. So make sure you are signed up for that. If you have any issues with that, go to hello@siliconsonder.com. They will be able to help you. Yes, Adrian, I will go back to that for sure. And then at the end of the day, this is my Spotify playlist. I do always include and save all of my Spotify playlists. I will provide the link in the chat. Anything else that you need so you can catch up on YouTube if you showed up a little bit late to this, or you want another facilitator's perspective on the week 3 mind map question, as well as another thought on belief. But thank you everybody for joining us. I certainly appreciate all of the love and support, especially around that mind map, because I know they have been tricky and a little bit tough, but they've just been really great. And I feel like I have learned a lot from each and every one of you in that capacity. So I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. And I know we are going to have a great week 3 of February. And I hope to see you at a future event again soon. Bye.
You know I love music, and every time I hear something hot, it makes me want to move. It makes me want to have fun, but it's something about this joint right here. This joint right here, it makes me want to let it go. Can't let this thing called love get away from you. Feel free right now, go do what you want to do. Can't let nobody take it away from you, from me, from we. No time for moping around, are you kidding? And no time for negative vibes, cause I'm winning. It's been a long week, I put in my hardest. Gonna live my life, feels so good to get it right. So I like what I see when I'm looking at me, when I'm walking past the mirror. Don't stress through the night at a time, and my life ain't worried about if you feel it. Got my head on straight, I got my vibe right, I ain't gonna let you kill it. See, I wouldn't change my life's just fine, 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 fine. Ooh, fine, 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 fine. Ooh, just fine, 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 fine. Ooh, see, I wouldn't change my life's just feels so good when you're doing all the things that you wanna do. Get the best out of life, treat yourself to something new. Keep your head up high in yourself, believe in you, believe in me. Having a really good time, I'm not complaining, and I'ma still wear a smile if it's raining. I gotta enjoy myself regardless. I appreciate life, I'm so glad that it's fine. So I like what I see when I'm looking at me, when I'm walking past the mirror. Ain't worried about you and what you're gonna do, I'm a lady, so I must stay classy. Gotta keep